Welcome to Hard Script.
Support the channel by liking, commenting, and subscribing. I promise even more interesting stories. It started with one sentence. One that wasn't shouted, wasn't emotional, wasn't even said with malice. Just cold precision, like you'd issue to a subordinate. Take the trash out. Or sleep on the couch. That was it. No drama. No build-up. Just a command disguised as routine. She didn't even glance up from her phone. The same phone she used to scroll endlessly through strangers' lives while mine unraveled in front of her. I stood there, towel in hand, halfway through drying a plate. And for the first time, I didn't feel like a man. I felt like furniture. Expected to move when told. Silent. Functional. Replaceable. She wasn't joking. That tone had become her default over the past year. Flat. Managerial. Like she was managing a staff, not sharing a life. And that night, something broke. Not with a bang. No shouting. No slammed doors. I just set the plate down, walked to the guest room, closed the door, and didn't come back. That night, I didn't dream. I stared at the ceiling, replaying every little compromise I had made in the name of keeping peace. I used to believe love meant flexibility. That real men adapted. But what I'd done was dissolve. Every eye roll, every correction, every time she cut me off mid-sentence in front of her friends and laughed like I was just part of the joke. Every time I let it slide, thinking that was strength. It wasn't. I'd taught her how to treat me, by showing her there were no limits. The next morning, I got up before the sun. No coffee. No goodbyes. I left the house like a ghost who still paid the mortgage. And for the first time in years, I didn't check my phone at lunch. No text from her. She thought I'd be the one to break the silence. That I'd crawl back into the master bedroom with some weak apology, trying to smooth things over. But something had shifted. Not just in the air between us, but in me. That night, I returned home. Walked past the living room without a glance. Her wine glass clinked on the table. She didn't speak. Didn't ask where I'd been. But I knew she was waiting. Waiting for the pattern. Only there was no pattern now. There was just the man I used to be. And the man who was done playing roles in someone else's script. She didn't ask why I left the bedroom. She didn't knock. She didn't even text. That was her move, emotional freeze-out dressed as indifference. But I wasn't waiting for warmth anymore. I had learned something in that silence. Distance can be peace when the noise is built from control. By day 3, the rhythm of the house had changed. Mornings were silent. No idle small talk. No questions about the day ahead. She poured her own coffee. I made mine. She left her dishes in the sink. I washed only mine. She huffed a little louder each time she walked past the guest room. Closed drawers a little harder. Cleared her throat like a signal. I gave her nothing. Because it wasn't punishment. It was preservation. I wasn't sulking. I was observing. I had stopped fighting for connection and started documenting disconnection. The way she used to call the shots and expect gratitude. The way she'd make dinner, then critique how I chewed. The way she'd say we when it suited her, but I when it didn't. Now, she moved like someone trying to reclaim control without asking for it. Subtle attempts to reset the dynamic. A note on the fridge, we're low on milk. I saw it. Ignored it. She brought it up later. Did you see the note? I nodded. I did. That was it. She blinked. The silence that followed was new for her. She wasn't used to that version of me. The one who didn't follow cues. What she hadn't understood was that I wasn't leaving. I wasn't packing bags or threatening divorce. I was still here. But not for her. Not in the way I used to be. My presence had changed. No more warm glances across the room. No more asking if she needed anything when I went out. I had become a roommate. One with boundaries. And that disturbed her more than anger ever could. The next morning, she wore that old hoodie, the one she saved for apologies. The one she thought softened her image. She moved around the kitchen slowly. Intentionally. She made eggs, toast, even poured orange juice into 2 glasses. I didn't sit down. She looked at me, expecting something. I nodded once. Thanks, I said, then walked out the door. She was still standing by the counter when it closed behind me. The silence between us wasn't just quiet, it had weight. A kind of presence. You could feel it pressing against your skin in the hallway, trailing behind you like smoke. I wasn't trying to win anything. I wasn't keeping score. But I had stopped showing up the way I used to. No more soft landings for her moods. No more emotional buffering to keep the peace. I simply removed my reaction, and with it, her control. At first, she tried to act like she didn't notice. The little sighs, The louder than usual cabinet doors, the exaggerated way she set her cup down, like punctuation marks begging for attention. I didn't flinch. I didn't respond. She could have been talking to the walls. I think that's when she began to panic, quietly. When she realized my silence wasn't a tantrum, it was a decision. She began making herself more visible, wearing lipstick to sit on the couch, asking if I wanted anything from the store, even when she never really intended to buy it. Casual attempts to reopen a door she thought I was just leaning against. But I had locked it from the inside. Then came the nostalgia. She made my favorite pasta one evening, set it down on the table without a word. I sat, ate it, thanked her, and left the kitchen. No compliments. No fake enthusiasm. Just acknowledgement. That's all she got. I watched her struggle with that. Not because she didn't want me to like it, but because the old version of me would have turned it into reconciliation. Would have offered a smile, a warm line of forgiveness. But I'd burned that script. She left a note a few days later. Just 5 words. Can we talk tonight? I saw it. Read it. Crumpled it into the trash. That was her move, not mine. If she wanted to talk, she'd have to use her voice. No more passive bridges built on paper. By day 10, the energy in the house shifted. She was softer. Not kind, just uncertain. Her rhythm was off, her timing late. She asked where I was going once when I picked up my keys. I said out. Nothing more. She waited for the follow-up, the reassurance. I didn't give it. And that was when I knew she finally understood. I was no longer waiting for her to see me. It was strange how the absence of sound could echo louder than any argument we ever had. The mornings were the clearest. I'd wake up early, take my coffee outside, and sit in the quiet. She'd walk past the window sometimes, pausing like she might step out, but she never did. Maybe because she didn't know who she'd find. I wasn't punishing her. I wasn't trying to manipulate her with distance. I had simply moved out of the space where I used to shrink. That version of me, the man who adjusted his tone, monitored his steps, made peace offerings before battles even began, was gone. I noticed the change in her posture first. No more bold strides through the hallway. Now she lingered, as if waiting for an invitation that wouldn't come. Her voice, when it did arrive, was smaller, careful. She asked questions like she was afraid of the answers. Not because I was cruel, but because my indifference was louder than any refusal. One night, she made steak. She used to mock me for liking it medium rare, said it was undercooked. But that night, it was perfect. Plated neatly, served quietly. No commentary. I nodded, thanked her, and ate in silence. She hovered nearby like she wanted to say something, but couldn't find the right entry point. That silence was my answer. After dinner, she followed me into the hallway, stopping just behind me. You didn't say if you liked it, she whispered. I paused, turned slightly. It was good. Then walked away. I wasn't being cold. I was just done filling in the spaces for her. By the end of the week, she started staying up later than me. Maybe she hoped I'd stay up too. But I went to bed early, woke up earlier. Every routine she used to shape around herself now moved without her. She hadn't expected it to last this long. The first few days, she probably thought I'd come around. But something had shifted. Not in anger, in identity. I didn't need her to change anymore. I just needed her to see that I already had. I remember the exact moment it shifted again. It wasn't dramatic. No yelling. No tears. Just her, standing in the kitchen one evening, holding her phone and looking like she'd forgotten how to speak. She watched me open the fridge, grab a bottle of water, and close it again without acknowledging her. That used to be unthinkable. Not because I was rude, but because I used to make space. Now I just existed without asking permission. That night, she left a note on the dining table. Not a text. A handwritten note. Can we talk tonight? I didn't respond. I didn't ignore it either. I folded it in half, placed it on the counter, and left for a walk. Not to make a point, but because I didn't want to talk. Not yet. Maybe not ever. When I returned, the note was gone. She didn't bring it up again. I think that's when she started to panic. She wasn't losing an argument. She was losing her audience. And without someone to react to her mood swings, the performance lost its purpose. A few days later, she tried nostalgia again. She pulled out an old board game we used to play on weekends, set it up on the coffee table. When I walked in, she motioned to it with a tentative smile. Remember this? I nodded. Yeah. I walked past it and into the kitchen. I wasn't cruel. I didn't slam doors. I didn't insult her. I just didn't play along anymore. The house felt different. Not just because of the silence, but because of what the silence represented: freedom. The kind that doesn't need noise to prove its strength. She started dressing up around the house again. Makeup for no reason. Perfume in the morning. She began hovering near the guest room more often, finding reasons to pass by. She was reaching. And for the first time, I wasn't reaching back. Not because I wanted to hurt her, but because I finally understood what it felt like to not be afraid of being alone. I stopped flinching when she sighed. That's when I knew I was out. Out of whatever system I'd lived in where her disappointment weighed more than my peace. Her irritation used to make my stomach tighten. I'd jump to fix things. Rephrase. Rewind. Reassure. But now I just watched her walk past, her sigh hanging in the air like a thread that no longer connected to anything. One night, she waited for me. Not in a romantic way. She was standing at the end of the hallway like a gatekeeper. I slowed my pace but didn't stop. She spoke, low and careful. I think we need to talk. I didn't argue. I nodded once, kept walking, and left the decision to her. If she had something to say, she'd follow. She didn't. That silence. It wasn't cold anymore. It was calm. It was a boundary, and it was mine. She tried being kind. Asked if I wanted coffee when she brewed her own. Left a snack on the counter I didn't ask for. She was testing the waters, seeing if the man she used to manage could still be reached through small, thoughtful acts. But that version of me had been packed away with the old rules. I noticed the changes. She started staying home more. Stopped taking calls late at night. Her phone, once glued to her palm, now sat face down on the table. She was trying to signal safety, maybe sincerity. I didn't question it. I just didn't reward it either. Change isn't proven in a week. It's proven in who you are when no one's watching. One morning, she left early. No note, no announcement. I didn't check where she went. I didn't wonder. That was new. When she came back, she lingered at the doorway, watching me read like she didn't know how to re-enter the space. I didn't invite her in. I didn't shut her out either. That was the balance now. She had to walk her own way back, not expect to be carried. She didn't speak, just stood there. For once, I think she realized how far the silence could reach. The days kept moving, but something about her didn't. Her energy was quieter now. Not defeated, just stripped down. I watched her hesitate before speaking, pause before entering a room. That wasn't guilt, it was unfamiliarity. For the first time in years, she didn't know how to predict me. That used to be her power. Anticipation. Calculation. Now she was working blind. She cooked more, cleaned more, asked about my day in soft tones. But her voice cracked when I answered plainly, without offering my usual bridge. She wasn't used to neutrality. She was used to resistance or reassurance. Some proof that I was still emotionally tied to her moods. Now I gave her facts, not feelings. One afternoon, she brought out an old photo album, set it on the table like bait. Pages full of before. Us at concerts, birthdays, weekend trips. I glanced once, then returned to my screen. She sat there silently, hoping nostalgia would do what her words couldn't. But memories don't override patterns. She tried touching my arm the next evening. Light, like a question. I didn't pull away. I didn't lean in either. She was looking for the man who used to lean toward her even when she pushed him back. That man didn't exist anymore. Not out of bitterness, but out of clarity. My forgiveness had stopped being reflexive. I started sleeping better. Deeper. The kind of rest that comes when your nervous system stops bracing for correction. No more double-checking my tone, my timing, my temperature. I breathed for myself now. She noticed. She started asking what I wanted for dinner again. But now it sounded like a guess, not a routine. She was trying to relearn me, but the blueprint had changed. I wasn't withholding love. I had just withdrawn the version of me that accepted imbalance as normal. And in that vacuum, she was left with herself. No distractions, no counterpoint, just the echo of her own decisions. By the third week, the silence had changed shape. It wasn't cold anymore. It was calculated. I had built a space where peace wasn't requested. It was expected. And she was finally beginning to understand what it cost to ignore that balance for so long. She tried apologies, some dressed in jokes, others in quiet admissions, but none of them reached me the way she hoped. Because they came from the same mouth that once dismissed my exhaustion, mocked my caution, and turned my kindness into weakness. I had stopped listening to the tone. Now I watched the pattern. She offered a weekend getaway, something we used to do to reconnect. Her eyes lingered on mine when she said it. I told her I had plans. That wasn't a lie. My plan was to stay exactly where I was. Quiet, focused, unavailable to manipulation. Her disappointment didn't sting. It just settled in the air like dust that would eventually need sweeping. I caught her one night scrolling through old messages, maybe looking for where the line had been crossed. But it wasn't a moment. It was a slow erosion. Every time she dismissed my needs, minimized my efforts, demanded more while giving less, each of those chipped away at us. And now she was sitting in the ruins pretending to wonder what happened. I went back to the gym, started reading more, showed up to work sharper. I wasn't rebuilding to impress her. I was remembering who I was before compromise became survival. My phone stayed silent. No explanations, no status updates. I was becoming the man I liked being, not the version someone tolerated. She cooked dinner again that Friday, lit candles, made that pasta I used to love. She didn't ask this time, just set the table for two and waited. I walked in, saw the scene, and paused. I didn't sit. I nodded once, grabbed my coat, and walked out for a quiet evening alone. She didn't follow. She didn't call. She just sat in the quiet she once created. And this time, it wasn't power. It was consequence. By week 4, she stopped pretending. The dinners ceased. The sighs stopped. There were no more passive-aggressive slams of drawers or attempts to provoke a spark that had long gone cold. She moved through the house like someone pacing a prison of her own design, slow, quiet, careful. One morning, I found her sitting at the edge of the couch, eyes fixed on nothing. She didn't speak. She just watched me as I grabbed my keys and left for work. There was no "have a good day," no attempt to recover routine, just that silence. But this time, it wasn't my silence that filled the room, it was hers. She began reaching in new ways. Cleaned the garage I'd left untouched. Folded my laundry and left it neatly on the guest bed. Not as a wife reclaiming her role, but as someone trying to regain relevance. I acknowledged none of it. Not out of cruelty, but clarity. I wasn't rewarding change born from fear. I was waiting to see if it came from truth. I started going out more. Coffee with coworkers. Long drives on Sunday mornings. I left early, returned late, without explanation. She didn't ask. She couldn't. Because asking would mean admitting she was no longer the authority. I was living on a frequency she couldn't tune into anymore. Then, one night, she broke the silence. "I miss who we used to be," she said, her voice cracking. I kept my eyes on the book in my lap. Not to ignore her, but to keep my ground. "We used to laugh. You used to look at me like I mattered." I nodded once. "That was before you made being unseen a routine." She swallowed hard. "I didn't mean to." "But you did," I said calmly. "And now the silence you feel, it's just the echo of what you taught me." She didn't reply. Not right away. Just stared at me like she was seeing me for the first time. Not as the man she once controlled, but the one she could no longer reach. She stood there for a long time, then turned and walked away. That was the real shift. Because I didn't follow. I didn't reassure. I didn't promise anything. I just sat there, quiet, unmoved, complete. She stopped trying after that night. No more dinners. No more folded laundry. No more hesitant footsteps outside the guest room. It was as if she finally understood that the bridge had burned not in fire, but in silence. That realization didn't come with screaming or doors slamming. It came with stillness. A quiet acknowledgement that I wasn't returning, not to the man I was, not to the dynamic she controlled, not to her version of us. I started preparing my own meals. Bought new clothes. Rearranged the guest room until it felt like home. It wasn't a rebellion, it was rebirth. And with every silent step, I reclaimed a version of myself that had been buried under years of compromise. She watched from a distance, always watching, but never interfering. Because now she knew my silence wasn't a tactic. It was a decision, a boundary, a line she no longer had permission to cross. One morning, I left a stack of documents on the kitchen table. Divorce papers, already signed on my end. No note, no speech, just clarity. She found them hours later. I know, because I returned home to silence and red eyes. But she didn't speak. Not that night. Not the next. Maybe she was hoping I'd change my mind. That it was a final test. But I wasn't testing. I was done. I moved out a week later. Not with drama. Not with tears. Just a quiet Saturday morning, a moving van, and a mind already detached. She stood in the doorway but didn't stop me. I didn't say goodbye. I didn't need to. Because closure isn't a conversation. It's a choice. Weeks passed. Then months. She sent a message once, a short one. I'm sorry. I read it. Deleted it. Not out of anger, but because I had no space left for the past. Today, I live alone. But I'm not lonely. I wake up without dread. I speak without fear. I laugh without restraint. And most importantly, I exist without needing permission. She thought silence would bring me back, but it taught me something else entirely. That peace isn't found in fixing what broke you. It's found in finally walking away from it. Real men don't explode. They exit. Subscribe for more power stories.